1 2, testing 1 2. One, two, testing 1 2.
The 4th of February. Members, can you ensure that your microphone is positioned directly in front of you and not pushed to the side, as the new microphones are directional, and if your mic is not directly in front of you and another member is speaking, any conversations or comments made in the vicinity of your microphone may be picked up and broadcast. Could all members who are online please indicate to speak, and we can test your connection before the meeting starts. Nobody's indicating, but we do have 2 online. Okay, Councillor O'Kane, I'll bring you. Feed, please. Great. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the regulatory section of the Planning and Regulatory Services Committee. Audio recording is being used to assist in preparing the formal minutes. Therefore, anyone participating in the meeting consents to being recorded and being live streamed on YouTube. I'd like to first welcome the new Head of Planning. Robbie, do you want to say a few words?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the warm welcome. Looking forward to working with you all.
Have we any apologies from the floor? Councillor Armstrong, I'll bring you in.
Yes, just that Councillor Mulholland is running late and he expects to be here soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think it may be already noted, but just to be formal, Alderman Kennedy won't be attending today.
We also have apologies from Councillor Kevin Savage and Alderman Kennedy. Okay. Is there any declarations of interest? And if not, sure, we can take them as we go along. So first of all, it's agenda item 3, and it's a report from the Head of Planning. Robbie, we'll just bring you in.
Thank you, Chair. So this is an item from the Local Government Association and the DFI. They're developing a planning, learning and engagement programme for councillors to help with the complex and challenging decisions that councillors have to make across the region. So they're setting up a task and finish advisory group of councillors to shape a learning and engagement programme, and they're looking for 2 volunteers from each council to join that group and shape that training programme.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Members, my recommendation to you is we consider the Chair and the Vice Chair of the Planning Committee. So if you're in agreement with that, if we could have a proposer and seconder. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Robbie, and thank you, Elizabeth. Yeah, I'm happy to propose that the Chair and Deputy Chair represent Council on that.
Councillor Flaherty will just bring you in.
Yes, Chair, look, happy to second, and it's an excellent idea.
Okay, so that's all agreed then. It'll be the chair and vice chair attending. Can we now have, we're not going to bring, no we're not. It's just for noting items 3.2 and 3.3. Is there any questions on it? Yep, Councillor Flaherty will just bring you in.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Yes, and thanks all for the reports that are attached. As a relative, I still feel like a relatively newcomer to this committee after 18 months, so it's good to keep getting these figures and keep getting Jen up on it. But I have a wee point I do want to raise, and I think this is the best opportunity, so forgive me if it's not. And maybe I can get some clarification on this. I received some correspondence from some agents just during the week regarding the caseloads and the management of the planning cases. And they were a little bit perturbed, and I didn't know the answer. I wasn't able to clarify it for them. But they have been advised that agents are not permitted to speak to planning officers without an introduction via an elected representative. And this is coming back from some agents. That would worry me on a number of levels. So I would just like some clarification as to if that is a change of policy, why it is a change of policy, and how on earth some of us elected. I don't think it is, but I do want it clarified, because we were always told the easiest thing to do was talk these things through and speak to your planning officer. So I hope maybe that this is just a misunderstanding / miscommunication, but I prefer it clarified. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, we're just going to bring Elizabeth in.
Thank you, Councillor Flaherty. That would not be the view of the Planning Department, but we're very happy to pick that up with you directly and details of the agent, and we'll come back to you directly via that and clarify some information. Thank you.
Robbie, you looking in? Okay, are you happy enough for that? Okay. We're going to now have the report from the Head of Building Control, Tom.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. Members, item 4.1 is in relation to a dual language street naming request. And by way of background, members will recall that in September 25, Council received an application for dual language street signage, namely in Irish, for a specified street in the borough, namely Woodside Hill in Portadown. As per Council's street naming and numbering policy, the application comprised of 2 stages, as set out in the body of the report. And as reported to the committee on the 5th of November, this application was progressed to stage 2 of the application process. Members are reminded that this is a second application for this particular street, and as noted on the survey letter to the residents, all comments and representations from any earlier application process have not been taken into consideration in this application. Members are reminded, therefore, that they must consider this as a new application, and only comments and representations regarding this current application should be taken into account. As approved under the policy, officers undertook a postal survey in December 25 to canvass the views of all the relevant occupiers. And following verification of the survey responses, I can confirm that the responses were as noted in the body of the report. Officers are unaware of any written views opposing this application. Members will note that the requisite threshold under the policy has therefore been met, i.e. the responses in agreement with the application represent not less than 2/3 of all those occupiers of premises on that street. As per Article 11.2 of the legislation, it is now a matter for members to decide whether or not the Council should use its discretionary power to approve this application for dual language street signage. And members are reminded that how that discretion is to be exercised is set out in Article 11 of the legislation, namely in deciding whether and if so, how to exercise its powers under paragraphs 1b or 2, in relation to any street, a council shall have regard to the views on the matters expressed by the occupiers of premises at the street. The recommendation, therefore, is that members review the information contained within this report and decide whether or not to use Council's discretionary power to approve the application received by the Council for dual language street sign in respect of this street in the Borough, which is Woodside Hill in Portadown. Members are also reminded of previous legal advice in reaching their decision that they must provide the reasons for the decision. And members will note that Stuart Beattie KC is here today with us should members have any legal questions in connection with this application. Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions members may have.
Thank you, Tom. I would just like to welcome Stuart Beattie KC here today. If there is any questions, can you please let us know that they are legal questions so we can go into confidential before we proceed with them. I just want to bring in Councillor Scott Armstrong.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have two questions. Well, I think the second one probably will be for Stuart Beattie. But the first one is just in relation to the postal returns. I note from the report the 3 were returned to Council by Royal Mail, as these were refused by the intended recipients, and therefore the intended recipient did not open or review the correspondence. Just give a bit more detail around that, and probably will then lead into the second question for Stuart, is what is the legal sort of connotations around sort of people not being able to put their views across. Thank you.
I'll just bring in Tom. Gabe.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Armstrong, for the question. Yes, there were 3 that were returned by Royal Mail to us. We use the Royal Mail tracking system, and the comment from Royal Mail was that they were refused by the intended recipients, and therefore the intended recipient did not open the survey letter, so we cannot predict what they were going to say, whether it be yes or no. So we have taken them out of the calculation. Hopefully that answers the question.
Are you okay with that, Councillor Armstrong? Do you want to come back in? Yep.
Yeah, thank you, Tom, and probably at this point probably propose to go into confidential, just ask a couple of legal questions to Stuart, if that's okay. So I propose that.
We're just going to go into confidential. For the legal questions, can I have a proposer and seconder to go into confidential? Proposed by Councillor Moutry, seconded by Councillor Donnelly. I take. I'm now seeking a proposer and seconder for item 4.1. Councillor Duffy.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thanks to Tom and for the legal representation in this case. So, having read the report thoroughly for a second time, I propose that this council use its discretionary power to approve the application for dual language street signage at Woodside Hill, Portadown.
Proposed by Councillor Duffy. Councillor Lavey, you're looking in?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd like to second that proposal by Councillor Duffy. Again, when you're looking at the figures, 71 responses in favour, which is above the required 2/3 threshold for consideration, and it's comfortably met that. And as such, I think the most appropriate outcome in this application is to honour the wishes of those strong majority of those residents and to approve this request. So I said happy to second a proposal from Councillor Duffy.
It's proposed and second. Councillor Armstrong, you're looking in?
Thank you, Chair, and just in relation to the conversations we've had there within legal advice and things like that, and there has been sort of on the previous applications, I would request that we do a recorded vote on this matter today. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to do a recorded vote. We'll just get that sorted. Yeah. That's vote closed now. Yeah. That was a recorded vote, so it was yes 6, abstain 5. The yes was myself, Councillor O'Dowd, Councillor Donnelly, Councillor Duffy, Councillor Lavery, Councillor McGeown, Councillor O'Kane. Abstain was Councillor Armstrong, Councillor Flaherty, Councillor Moutry, Councillor Mulholland and Councillor Wilson. It was 6 to 5, so it passes. Councillor, would We'll just go, Councillor Armstrong, you're looking in?
Thank you, Chair. I think it might be a question then that probably need to go into confidential for legal for Stuart, if that's okay. I propose we go into confidential.
Right. Chair, I was just checking my vote was counted there, because I didn't hear my name called out, but
Apologies. Yeah. Can we just break for a couple of minutes? Okay. Unfortunately, councillors Nolan, we're going to have to take the vote again due to a technical error. So, is all ready? Okay, so we'll try this again. Can everyone just double check that they have voted, please? Okay, so we finally got there in the end. So it was 6 yes and 6 abstained. It was recorded vote, so yes is myself, Councillor O'Dowd, Councillor Donnelly, Councillor Duffy, Councillor Lavery, Councillor McGeown and Councillor O'Kane. Abstain is Councillor Armstrong, Councillor Flaherty, Councillor Moutry, Councillor Mulholland, Alderman Rankin and Councillor Wilson. So it passes. Is there any more legal questions? We're still in confidential. Can I have a proposer and seconder to go back into confidential, please? Proposed by Councillor Armstrong, seconded by Councillor Moutry. and Collie Alderman. Yeah. So, thank you, Stuart.
Thank you.
So we're just going to move on now to 4.2, and I'm going to bring in Tom again.
Thank you, Chair. Item 4.2 is a decision item, members, and it's a review of the non-statutory charges for building control services. Members may be aware that the principal core function of building control services is to enforce the building regulations, and there are fees for enforcing these, and they are set in statute by the Department of Finance, so this report does not cover those particular fees in question. However, on occasions, the services of building control we do undertake a range of other duties related to building regulations that fall outside the scope of those prescribed fees, and those additional duties are outlined in Table 1, Appendix 5. And whilst these services are valued by customers, they require officer time to administer. Consequently, each council currently applies non-statutory fees as detailed in Table 1. So, as to recover the administration costs provided in these requests, through regional discussions, councils across Northern Ireland have agreed that, subject to each individual council's approval, to implement similar charges for the services as listed in Table 1. Members will note that fees relating to the provision of the council's property certificate have also been regionally agreed, and these are fixed for a 3-year term, following consultation with both Solus and the Law Society. Members appreciate that the property certificate function plays a key role in the property conveyancing process, where prospective purchasers for domestic or commercial properties rely on this service to identify any known legislative breaches associated with that property. All non-statutory fees are intended solely to recover the administration costs involved in delivering these services. As I say, the non-statutory fees outlined in Appendix 1 will be reviewed on an annual basis. Decision before members is that members are asked to consider the content of this report and approve the proposals for non-statutory charges as set out in Table 1, Appendix 5 of this report, to be applied from the 1st of April 2026. Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions members may have.
No lights on, so can we have a proposer and seconder, please? Proposed by Councillor Flaherty, seconded by Councillor Armstrong, yes? Yes. Thank you. That's us all agreed, yes? Yep. There's an item 4.3 is an information item. Is there any questions, or are you happy to note? Happy to note? Yep. There is agenda item 5. There is 4 correspondence. Are we happy to note, or is there any questions on that? Happy to note? Okay. Yeah. So is there any other relevant business? No. So we're going to have a short recess for 5 minutes. Okay, everybody? Can we start the live feed? Yep. So we're on agenda 6. So this is the applications for planning permission to be considered by the committee as per schedule of planning applications. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the planning section of the meeting of the Planning and Regulatory Service Committee. Audio recording is being used to assist in preparing the formal minutes. Therefore, anyone participating in the meeting consents to being recorded and being live streamed on YouTube. Also, during the course of this section of the meeting, questions may be asked by councillors who are members of the Planning and Regulatory Service Committee of Planning Officers, applicants for planning permission, objectors, or those speaking on their behalf. In doing so, councillors endeavour to ascertain, couldn't get that word out, the information which they feel is necessary to enable them to determine the application. However, members of the public should note that councillors will not reach a conclusion as to whether the application should be approved, refused or deferred until the debate of the application is concluded. Appendix 1 has been withdrawn, so we are now going on to Appendix 3. We are going to let Patricia and Paul just get themselves sorted there for a wee second. Is okay? Okay, so this is Appendix 3, application number LA 0820232421F, and it's from Planning Senior Officer Liam. Liam, can I bring you in, please?
Thank you, Vice Chair. This application seeks planning permission for the erection of 4 pairs of semi-detached, 3-bedroom, 2-storey dwellings and lands at Hunters Hill Road in Guildford. This application is being presented to the committee as it attracts 4 or more objections from separate postal addresses. It has taken the members to read the officer's report in full, and therefore this is only a brief synopsis of the issues set out therein. This application site lies within the development limits of Guildford, as set out in the local area plan. The site is a section of a larger zone housing zoning, GD3, as set out in said plan, and the site forms part of the larger Hillcroft housing development. For the reasons set out in detail in the report, officers are of the opinion that the proposal to develop the site for residential purposes accords with the provisions of the SPPS Edition 2 and the area plan, and as such, the principle of residential development on this site is acceptable. Policy QD1 of PPS 7 requires that new residential development demonstrate that the proposal creates a quality and sustainable residential environment. This policy identifies 9 criteria which proposals for residential development are expected to comply with. These have been considered in detail in the officer's report, and as set out, officers are of the opinion that the proposed development is acceptable, as such it complies with the SPPS Edition 2, Policy QD1 of PPS 7 and its addendum, and the supplementary planning guidance as detailed in Creating Places. In terms of traffic, access and parking, officers have consulted with DFI Roads and are satisfied that proposed access and parking arrangements proposed are acceptable. In terms of landscaping, the existing boundary vegetation is being retained and supplemented along the boundary with Dumbarton Bungalows, and officers are satisfied that this helps maintain acceptable residential amenity for the occupants of said bungalows. The application proposes to dispose of foul sewage through connection to NI Water infrastructure. NI Water have been consulted and responded with no objections, so in that regard officers are satisfied the sewage disposal can be dealt with adequately on site. Members are advised, as set out in the report, there have been a number of objections in relation to this proposal. All the matters raised in those objections have been considered in detail in the report. From the report, members will be aware that there is a fallback position here for the applicant in that they can build out planning approval Q 2008-0098. So in that respect, officers, having considered the application against the area plan and the relevant prevailing policies, are of opinion that the proposal is acceptable and are recommended that the application be approved subject to the conditions as set out in the report. I'll try and take you through the PowerPoint. So this is the location of our site. You can see it in the sort of top left-hand corner there of the existing development that is already developed within the Hillcroft development there. This is our site location plan. You can see the section outlined in red, which would be one of the last phases of the proposed development. So this is our site layout plan. You can see the 4 pairs of semi-detached dwellings, and you can see the indicative lines of the sections that will follow. This is the house type proposed. It's the floor plan of the house types proposed. So these are the site sections that have been provided. It's the PSD drawn in reference to the consultation with DFI Roads. This is a blown up section of the relationship between the boundary of properties number 18 and 19 and number 30 Dumbarton Bungalows, with the existing boundary treatments shown in green, the proposed in the darker colour, the retaining walls with the 1.8 metre high timber fencing above. And that basically is showing you the sort of eye of sight line from the first floor level of the proposed properties and how that would impact on the existing dwelling at number 30. This is the approved development under the 2008 approval that represents a fallback position for the applicant. You can see the sort of differences there in that the orientation of the buildings in the corner are changed somewhat. The properties immediately behind the number 30 Dumbarton Bungalows were in the previous approval 6 metre high chalet bungalows, and what we have now proposed are 2-storey 8 metre high semi-detached dwellings. So again, just a blown up version of that, so you can see that the sort of orientation of some of the blocks have changed. The two dwellings closest there to number 30 are previously approved as bungalows and can be built out on site. The row of townhouses there that you can see in the sort of bottom section of the site are 2-storey dwellings. So this is the house types as previously approved. That were the chalet bungalows on the site, just for site context, which is part of the fallback position. Again, some of the chalet bungalows are the bungalows that have been approved on the site that can be built out at any point in time. Next slide, please. Again, this is just the variety of those house types that can be built out on site. And again, the 2-storey element there that I was referring to on the southern section of the application site. And again, that's the the block of 3 there that you will note on that corner as well. So this is a view of the site from in the site, looking towards the first floor sub-level of the dwelling as built, as it is at the moment. You can see the context of the additional or the other approved buildings that have been built adjacent. So that's the second set of semis there that have the foundations in as well. That's just basically looking from the site right across over the top of the dwellings below in Dumbarton Bungalows to give you an idea of the site context and the level differentiation we're dealing with here. So that's the first floor completed units there of 18 and 19. And you can see the context of the existing boundary planting, the fencing proposed, and the bungalow that sits below. And that's a view from the driveway up into Dumbarton Bungalows. You can see number 30 there, and you can see the first floor sublevel of the existing built farm that's on the site within the Hillcroft development. Thank you.
Thank you, Liam. We have here Patricia to make representation and objection to the application, and we also have Paul Conlon from Buildcon Homes Limited to make representation in support of the application. Patricia, you will have 3 minutes, and whenever them 3 minutes is up, it'll just cut off on you, sorry. If you just wait till we get the 3 minutes on the clock, please. Sorry, if you press your...
Okay. Oh, sorry. That's okay.
Patricia, if you would just hit your wee button again, please. And once you start talking, if you hit your wee button there. Yep. Once you start talking, the clock will start.
When these properties are sold in Hillcroft, who will actually own the area outside of the Hillcroft fence and before Dumbarton Bungalows? This is the area that is a steep slope area of about 8 foot of a bank. It's important to know who will be responsible and, more importantly, who will be liable, particularly if problems arise in the future, for example, the likes of subsidence. I want to know the long-term position and not just maintenance. Maintenance of trees and shrubs, all very well, but they don't tell me the long-term position. I appreciate that the builder has finally recognised after many, many months that a retaining wall is needed. In my objection, I asked for details of what this wall actually entails. To date, I haven't had any kind of information. Permission was granted for bungalows in Hillcroft. Hillcroft is an extremely elevated site at the top of Hunters Hill Road in Guildford, which is a massive, massive hill, and two-storey houses are not in keeping with the landscape. I have already asked if the planning committee will visit both Hillcroft, site and Dumbarton Bungalows before they make any decision, because I honestly believe that you need to see the reality and the impacts of residents, not just of Dumbarton Bungalows, but of Hillcroft. People who bought bungalows thinking they were buying into houses that were purely for bungalows. The builders already put foundations in and scaffolding for two-storey houses. It would be a huge mistake to make a decision based on paper-based plans that do not adequately reflect the reality or the impact of two-storey dwellings. I appreciate photographs have been shown here. Those photographs do not show the impact on my home, and I live at number 30 Dumbarton Bungalows. Those photographs do not show the reality. At the moment, I can only see the roofs of the chalet bungalows from my house. Seeing the scaffolding for the 2 stories, very different matter. There's land owned by Dr. Lyons that runs between 25 and 29 Dumbarton Bungalows, between Dumbarton and Hillcroft site. That strip of land ends before my home. It brings Hillcroft site much closer to my home. The 2-storey scaffolding are an absolute blot on the landscape that can be seen as far away as the Stromore Road. My bungalow will be dwarfed by a 2-storey building that will be 20 feet above the roof of my bungalow. I ask the planning committee take this into account when looking at actual impacts. My architect, Bill Taggart, in his objection, proposed alternative plans. Again, no response was received to this. I would have absolutely no objections if bungalows that were already approved for numbers 18, 19, etc. If that was the case, I would have no problems with bungalows being built in Hillcroft if they're built the chalet bungalows.
Sorry, Patricia, it just cuts off once you hit the 3 minutes. I would like to bring in now Paul Conlon. He's representing in support of the application. Paul, can you indicate to speak, please?
Chair, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak. We acknowledge the concerns raised and recognise that this has been a difficult situation for all parties involved. From our perspective, as a developer and builder, we wish to assure the committee that all works will be carried out in full complements with planning conditions, building control requirements and engineering certification. Any retaining or boundary structures required will be properly designed, inspected and approved prior to construction and will be located wholly within the site boundary. These are standard procedures for developments of this nature and scale. In relation to privacy and overlooking, the submitted section and site drawings clearly demonstrate that there is no acceptable overlooking into neighbours' rear amenity spaces, with existing boundary treatments and level difference effectively preventing harmful sightlines. We have engaged constructively and professionally with planning officers throughout this process, and the scheme before you today reflects that engagement. We would also note that 2 of the proposed homes are already reserved by purchasers who have been left in a position of uncertainty pending the outcome of this application. While we respect the neighbouring residents may not welcome development, the planning system exists to balance individual concerns with adopted planning policy and the wider housing need. This site is designated for residential use, and its proposal has been professionally assessed as complement and appropriate. We remain committed to delivering this development responsibly and according to all statutory requirements. For these reasons, we respectfully ask the committee to support the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. You're well within your time there. We also have in attendance and have speaking rights is Malky Conlon from Bilcon Homes and Herbie McAleer from HD Designs, and that is, they're here for clarification purposes only. Do we have any questions? Councillor Lavery, I'll just bring you in.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've loads of questions, actually. So I'll get the ball rolling on a couple. So obviously one of the critical points, I guess, regarding this application is this conversation around betterment, and that this new application before is allowed to be better than the previous ones. So I'd just like to get firstly a query on a bit more detail for Liam as why is it considered better, given that it seems that there's chalet housing throughout this development, and I suppose there was a reason for that back a number of years ago as to why that was needed and why that was important while it was overlooking our considerations or whatever those considerations were. And then now it's changed to maybe 2 stories. So why is it considered betterment when it seems to be a sort of substantial change to the nature of the development? Second query is regarding retaining wall, and there's some conversation that this new application is required retaining wall, and there isn't an application, or there is a retaining wall in this application. Is there a retaining wall in the previous one? Is that serious grounds of maybe unforesight at the time, and that a retaining wall is needed, and this is an improvement on that basis? And then a third one, it's sort of been talked about that some of these houses maybe have already been sold or reserved. I'd just like to clarify from Liam, is the housing development present being built in line with the previous approvals, or is it already proceeded towards this application even though it's not approved yet? So those 3 queries regarding betterment in terms of the moving away from the bungalow chalet type homes, the retaining wall issue, and then the context of this development in terms of the houses being reserved or sold. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lavery. Liam, can I bring you in, please?
Thank you, Councillor Lavery, for the questions. Yeah, firstly, the previous scheme didn't have any detail with regard to retaining walls, so this scheme does. In that respect, I suppose there is a degree of betterment given the degree of the slope that we're dealing with along that boundary with Dumbarton Bungalows. In terms of how we deal with the sort of retaining wall elements of these proposals, generally what we would use would be an informative that would be attached. Now, it's not set out as a condition in the planning report before you, but generally what we would attach would be a planning informative, and it reads along the lines of, it is recommended that the proposed retaining structures on the site be designed and constructed in accordance with the relevant British standard codes of practice for earth retaining structures. It is also recommended that any such design be certified by an appropriately qualified structural engineer. So that's basically how we deal with the standards of practice and how we deal with those retaining structures that are set out in the detailed plans that we have. I suppose in reference to the other aspects of betterment, the 2 properties that immediately backed on to 30 Dumbarton Bungalows were originally bungalows, but you'll note that there was a row of townhouses that were slightly further down the site that were actually 2-storey, and I think when you consider it in the round, what we have in front of us now in terms of the disposition of the buildings, we consider that to be a form of betterment overall in terms of the project. And the third question was in relation to, I'm missing it now. Yeah, in respect of I suppose the fact that the developer has gone ahead and potentially agreed sales and stuff wouldn't be a material consideration for us in the context of this application. What we're looking at on the ground is just what has been built up to this point in time. And yes, the first floor level and the foundations you can see of the 2 pairs of semis that immediately bound Dumbarton Bungalows would be in accordance with the submitted scheme that we have in front of us here for consideration tonight.
Councillor Larvey, are you okay with that? Okay. Councillor Wilson, do you want to come in?
Yes, thank you, Chair, for bringing me in. It's just a few questions. First of all, my first question is to the Planning Committee. The objector had said that paperwork had been submitted in regards to the opposition to this development. I asked why her architect hadn't received any correspondence on this. The objector has stated that they didn't receive any reply or any correspondence around that. That's my first question to the planners. The other thing is, whereabouts is the retaining wall going to be located? Is it going to be directly behind this fence? And was there vegetation along the top of that bank where these fences are currently positioned. I know at other applications, vegetation has had to be retained for privacy and obviously for the environment. And is there any prospect that vegetation will be put back in there as a screening purpose, as a more natural look? As you can see, these properties do sort of are highly elevated above Dumbarton bungalows. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Liam, do you want to come in there?
Yep, thanks, Councillor Wilson. I suppose the suggestion from the applicant and her planning consultant in relation to the types of dwellings for the site is not really something we can get into. As officers, we just have to assess the application in front of us and whether or not we deem that the house types as submitted are acceptable. It wouldn't be up to us to suggest that the applicant changes his submission unless we felt that what we had in front of us wasn't acceptable, and that isn't the case here. So that would be the first thing in that one. In terms of the details with regard to the retaining structure, Ruth, maybe we could bring up the section. This maybe be helpful to sort of get a better understanding of what we're actually dealing with here. I think the one with the sight line probably on it is probably the most helpful one. Yeah, so, sorry, yeah. So on that one there, Councillor Wilson, you can see that there is a retaining structure with a 1.8 metre high timber fence above it. The green section highlights the existing vegetation, and then the darker vegetation there indicated is proposed supplementary vegetation along that boundary. And then you can see the disposition of the bungalow at number 30 there. So yes, all three of those aspects are covered within the context of the application. So look, we do have a level of screening, and essentially that level of screening is largely obscured behind the fence and the retaining structure in front of it, but that the existing vegetation there highlighted in green does provide a further degree of screening that's already in existence on that site.
I'll just bring in Councillor Wilson again.
Thank you, Liam, for the information. Just in any supplementary vegetation which is going to be planted, who maintains that? Is that the property owner of the new dwellings, or is there a site management for that? Thanks.
Yeah, Councillor Wilson, condition number 5 there sets out that prior to the occupation of a dwelling, that a landscape management plan has to be submitted for council to approve. So we've covered that off with a negative condition.
Alderman Rankin, you're looking in?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Through the Chair, Liam, could you clarify again? I was trying to listen to everything you were saying attentively. The retaining structure, did you say it wasn't a condition, but it was an informative? Is that what you said? Could you explain to the committee what that means? Because I know from 25 years experience as elect, there's been developers who have put retaining structures in and they've failed after a number of years, and I can name some examples. And if those retaining structures had been a condition, I think going back to the planning process, and I think it should have been tightened up going back. That's different examples I can think of. But could you explain what the difference is between a condition and an informative, just for the committee?
Yes, Alderman Lang, thank you. Essentially, look, the expertise with regard to how to assess retaining structures and their feasibility and whether they work or not isn't available to planning officers. So back in the DOE days, we used to have construction service used to look at these things for us, but we no longer have that. So basically what we're doing now is we're saying, look, it's up to the owner to comply with the British standards that are set out in the Code of Practice for retaining structures, and they have to adhere to that. And therefore, it's not a condition that we as planning officers could police because we don't have the expertise to do it. We would have to be drawn in different consultation bodies and stuff to look at that for us. So rather than that, we're using the British standard that has to be applied for any retaining structure that's built within a housing development, and that's why it's used as an informative rather than a condition. So we're informing the applicant that they have to comply with a standard condition that's beyond the scope of planning, rather than a condition that we would be attaching that we would be asked to police ourselves. Hope that makes sense.
Alderman Rankin, are you happy enough for that, or do you want to come back in? Sorry, 1 me second, sorry.
Yep, okay. I sort of understand what he's saying. The problem is later down the line, if there's any failure of these retaining structures, it's falling back on the homeowners and their house insurance and legal, and that's the problem. I know that's a wider issue, but I just wanted to get that position clarified for the committee, what the difference was between a condition and an informative, so that they're aware when they're making the decision. But thanks for the reply.
Okay. Councillor Lavery, you're looking back in again?
Thank you, Chair. I suppose two additional quick queries. One in relation to the green space and sort of having a look to comparing what was previously approved and what's the sort of application before us. And I'm just wondering, in the application before it, it looks like the public green space area at the corner of the application in the vicinity looks slightly reduced or proportionately reduced in the new application compared to the old one. Would Liam have an understanding of what that loss is, if any, in terms of that green space area? And then the second question is to the applicant. Liam seemed to indicate, and if I've got this right, Liam seemed to indicate that construction's already begun on this. So a big question to the applicant, if that's the case, why is construction sort of begun or started when the planning hasn't been approved yet? So those two questions, Chair.
Yeah, Councillor Abbey, the open space in that corner of the site has changed slightly, but what we're looking at is that the 10% figure across the totality of the site is actually complied with, and we were content that that was the case for the totality of the development. So the standards as set out in the relevant planning policy, the 10% of the site area be afforded open space provision, we believe is still being met.
Sorry, and the second question was to yourself, Paul, if I can bring you in to answer Councillor Lavery's query, if you press your wee button.
Sorry, the question was why was ongoing works when there was no planning? The reasons out there is we've been trading this company 53 years. Our record, I think, has been pretty good. We've worked hard where we get. With any site we've done, we've always finished. We've always got there. Probably now, the biggest thing for us in the industry is the shortage of trades. We've got employees. We're not a massive building company, even though we're trading 53 years. It is a worry of losing men and not getting them back, which is a big problem. So in our defence, it wasn't that we're charging on and putting up in scaffold and going against the planners. We're definitely not doing that. Just was trading so long, just thought that everything would be okay, and unfortunately it's led us drastically the last 3 or 4 months. We have been big losses, worrying about losing men, paying men off because the site's sitting dormant. We have to still trade. Yeah, so that's the reason why we continued on. Mainly a shortage of trades, like, you know, and our record of trading for 53 years.
You okay, Councillor Lowry, with that answer? Okay. Is there any more questions before we go into members' debate? Nope. Okay. Members' debate, is there anything anybody wants to say on this? Nope. Right, can we go into oh, sorry. Councillor Lowry, I'll bring you in.
Suppose as elected reps have to talk through our decision making, so I just want to talk through what's going on in my head. And it's critical it goes if we can see this as a betterment or not. And to be honest, I'm not sure if I fully can see this as a betterment. Looking at the previous application in terms of the layout of the housing and having less residential impact compared to this new one, for me the old one sort of looks better in terms of having that congealed amount of open green space there at the bottom and corner of the application. On the other hand, I can understand the arguments what in particular, and as Councillor Rankin touched on about the retaining wall, and I think, you know, it's important, and if it's in this new one, that's kind of critical, because I know Councillor Rankin was touching on a number of issues of previous applications and other sites, and I think of a few myself, and it's really important that those appropriate retaining wall structures there are really scoped out. So I'm kind of conflicted myself, Chair, and whether or not this is betterment or not. So I don't know really what, I would like to hear what other members think, but I'm really conflicted on this one, Chair.
Okay, is there anybody else wants to come in? Councillor Wilson, I'll just bring you in.
Thank you, Chair. Probably sort of stayed in the same vein as Councillor Lavery. We certainly don't want to be stifling any business, and I know Conlon Brothers have been in trading for a long time and built a lot of housing developments. But I think, as I say about Councillor Lavery, I'm sort of tore one way or the other in regards to this. I think the previous application was very good style of properties. And I sort of, whenever Alderman Rankin raised the issue with retaining walls, you know, retaining walls is there for a reason. You know, they should be looked at as a proper construction as a house is. You know, if a retaining wall isn't proper and that falls, that could fall or injure somebody or whatever. So it's just sort of in the same vein as Councillor Lavery on this, but certainly we don't want to be stifling anybody's, you know, business, and what it's welcome that our construction sector is still going and under difficult circumstances, but just sort of my thoughts on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Is there anyone else that wants to come in? Councillor Duffy?
Yes, Chair, thank you. Yes, my view on it is it's sort of the completion of a building site. It was going to be completed one way or another, so it was, and this application seems fine to me. Yes, there's talk about retaining walls. You know, there can be issues with them, but built properly, and this firm has said and done that they do their work, they complete their work properly. And been in the building trade my whole life, I've never heard any complaints about this firm. You know, and usually builders all talk about firms that, you know, do shoddy work. So I don't see nothing wrong with this application, and I'll be leaning towards passing it. Sure.
Okay, Councillor Duffy, thank you. Robbie, you're looking in, yes? Sorry, can you press your wee button again? Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Just a note of caution on Councillor Lavery's point. You're looking at this as whether it's a betterment or not, and that has been set out in the officer's report, but the pure assessment here really should be, is this acceptable or not? So just a note of caution there that you may not find it to be better than the previous scheme, but you have to look at whether it's acceptable in its own right and whether there's a grounds to resist it. So just bear that in mind in your consideration.
Thank you, Robbie. Is there any more questions? Sorry. No? So we will go to members' decision then. Do we have a proposer and seconder?
Chair, I propose we accept the officer's recommendation for the retention of works. Just accept the proposal on this site.
Okay, Councillor Duffy, you've proposed. Do we have a seconder? Councillor McGill.
Happy to second.
So we have a proposer and seconder to approve the officer's recommendation. Is everybody happy with that? Yep. Okay. Sorry, Councillor Lavery's looking in.
Thank you, Chair. I wouldn't say necessarily I'm happy with it, but taking on the head of planner's advice and that within a margin, I suppose we'll have to go with that. It's the officer recommendation, but can definitely see the views of all sides on this one. It's, for me, it's sort of borderline one way or the other, but appear, to be in the minority on this occasion, but I suppose that's my views.
Okay, Councillor Lavery, thank you. So that has been approved. So we move on now to Appendix 4. Yeah. Sorry, just before we move on, there was no secondary proposals, so, in that last one, so that was approved, okay? We are now on Appendix 4, application number LA 08 2023 2955F. It's planning manager Kyle is going to take this, and we have Jim McNeely, Claremont Architects, and Cal Riley, Claremont Architects, to make representation in support of the application. Also in attendance, as a council expert, we have Tom Stokes from TSA Planning. So, we're going to take the application from Kyle, if you can run us through the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks. This plan application seeks full plan permission for a mixed-use development comprising of the demolition of an existing dwelling, convenience shop and industrial unit to provide a new neighbourhood shop with fuel forecourt, canopy and 8 light industrial units with associated car parking and a proposed new access. The application site is located on the Ballynahomemoor Road in Armagh. The application is before you this evening as it's a major plan application and has received more than 4 objections from separate postal addresses. Officers have taken it, members have read the report in full, and as such this is a synopsis only. The application site is located within the development limits of Armagh, but is located outside of the central area as defined by the Armagh Area Plan 2004. The site is whiteland within the plan and therefore has not been zoned. Officers consider the plan remains supportive to mixed-use development of this nature within the settlement limit of Armagh on whiteland, subject to addressing matters of concern in relation to impact on the retail vitality and viability of the Armagh central area, the potential of utilising vacant industrial premises, and the provision of high-quality landscaping. The principle of development comprises 2 main elements. Firstly, the neighbourhood shop and petrol filling station, and secondly, the industrial Class B2 element. Regarding the retail, members will note that a convenience store currently operates on the site with a floor area of approximately 87 square metres, and the proposed retail unit would provide a retail unit with a gross floor area of 737 square metres and a net retail floor area of 486 square metres. With regards to retail, the SPPS seeks a town centre first approach. The SPPS sets out that town centres' uses should be considered in order of preference as follows: the primary retail core, town centres, edge of centre and out of centre locations only where sites are accessible by a good choice of public transport modes. The application site is in an out of town, an out of centre location. As detailed in the report, in accordance with the SPPS, a sequential assessment has been carried out and officers are satisfied that it has been demonstrated that a sequentially preferable site does not exist in this instance. The applicant is detailed within their retail impact need assessment, the development's qualitative and quantitative assessment of need. The qualitative need centres on the existing retail premises on the site, and the development would provide more choice, be more in keeping with customer expectations. There's no other neighbourhood shop in this part of East Armagh, and the shop would serve employees in adjacent industrial units. Officers are of the opinion that a proportionate level of qualitative need exists primarily due to the fact there is an existing retail store operating on the site, and this will function as an upgrade and enhancement to that facility. In qualitative terms, therefore, officers consider a need for this development has been demonstrated. In quantitative terms, the expenditure growth over coming years has been considered. In considering this, the development had to assess the proposed development's catchment area, estimate the amount of future potential retail expenditure within the catchment area, and the associated expenditure growth that might occur within the set time frame. The quantitative assessment is fully detailed in the report. Officers are of the opinion that the quantitative assessment fails to support the additional convenience floor space of the scale proposed at this location. The applicant sets out that their estimated level of deferred trade and percentage impact by location, and estimates the percentage impact for Armagh central area to be 5%, which is minus £2.92 million. The percentage impact on other stores within the 5-minute catchment is identified as 13% at minus £390,000, and elsewhere outside the 5-minute catchment is 4% of minus £190,000. The applicant asserts that an impact of 5% on the central area is not a harmful impact, and even if the entire turnover of the proposal was diverted from the central area, the impact would only be 6%. Impacts on individual stores range from 0% to 7%. It is noted that unprotected shops elsewhere in the catchment will each have approximately £190,000 diverted from them, resulting in a 16% impact on Spar at Newry Road and a 10% impact on Centre at College Hill. Members are advised that these two stores are not located on sequentially preferable sites to the application site. Officers have concluded that more trade may be drawn from outside the central area, increasing the impact on same. These stores are not protected by policy, and the assumptions made by the applicant allow for the most robust assessment of impacts on the protected central area. Officers conclude that the development is unlikely to have a harmful impact on a protected centre and would not have an unacceptable adverse impact on the vitality and viability of existing centres within the catchment, and would therefore be compliant with paragraph 6.297 of the SPPS. The retail element is also considered to create no conflict with Armagh Area Plan 2004. In relation to the industrial element, the proposal would fall under Class B2, Light Industrial of the Plan and Use Classes Order, Northern Ireland 2015. Policy PED 1 of PPS4 operates presumption in favour of development, such that a development proposal incorporating a Class B2 use will be permitted in an existing industrial employment area, provided it is of a scale, nature and form appropriate to the location, or elsewhere in cities and towns. Such proposals will be determined on their individual merits. Officers therefore are satisfied that the proposed Class B2 use is acceptable in principle, and that policy PED 1 is satisfied. The proposal has also been considered against policy PED 9 of PPS4, and officers raised no concerns. Members will note from the report that there is also a live approval on the site for Class B2 units. The design, scale, massing and choice of external materials of all proposed buildings and structures have been detailed in the report. Officers are satisfied with the proposals and consider the development will appear sympathetic to neighbouring buildings in the area and will not have an unacceptable visual impact and will satisfactorily visually integrate into the immediate area. Officers raised no concerns over the design layout in relation to the SPPS, Living Places or Policy DS2 of a planned strategy for rural Northern Ireland. The impact on amenity has been fully considered. Officers are satisfied through the imposition of conditions that the proposed development will not create noise, odour, lighting or any other nuisance which would unduly affect any neighbouring property. Officers, in consultation with the Council's Environmental Health Department, following due consideration of all information submitted and matters raised by third parties, have no concerns in relation to noise or odour emissions. Further to that, due to the layout and separation distances, the proposal will not overshadow or adversely impact light to any nearby property. As such, the proposal is considered to comply with Annex A of the SPPS, Policy PED 1 of PPS4, the relevant criteria of Policy PED 9 of PPS4 and DCAN 4. A transport assessment form has been submitted in support of the application. The proposal seeks to provide new access on the Ballynahone Road for the proposed retail and petrol filling station development. It's proposed to utilise the existing access for the Class B2 developments. 2 puffin crossings are proposed across Ballynahone Road to give safer pedestrian access for Orangefield residents and those approaching on the southern and western side of the Ballynahone Road. Uncontrolled pedestrian crossing points at Orangefield Close and Orangefield Crescent will be realigned. The access to the development is considered to comply with Policy AMP2 of PPS3, and DFA roads have raised no concerns. The development has the potential to generate a total of 1,630 two-way vehicle trips daily, so that's 813 arrivals and 817 departures. The TAF confirmed that the peak hour for the site would likely be 8 AM to 9 AM and 5 PM to 6 PM. 88 parking spaces are proposed for light industrial units and 4 HGV parking spaces, with 1 being used to serve the retail development. The parking requirement is for 85 spaces, so the proposal exceeds the parking requirements of parking standards for the industrial development. For the retail element, 61 parking spaces are proposed and 8 spaces are proposed for the pumps. The requirement of parking standards is for 53 spaces, so again, the provision exceeds the requirement of parking standards. Officers in consultation with DFA roads are therefore content that the proposed development accords with the SPPS and policies AMP2, AMP7 of PPS3, the relevant criteria of policy PED 9 of PPS4 and the parking standards document. NI Water, in its consultation response, advised that an assessment has indicated that there are capacity issues, and this establishes significant risks of detrimental effect to the environment and detrimental impact on existing properties. NI Water note that the downstream catchment is constrained by overloaded sewage infrastructure, including one or more downstream unsatisfactory intermittent discharge, which has caused a negative impact on the environment. These discharges are recorded at Armagh Road CSO, which discharges into clean water. In keeping with Appeal Reference 2021-AO231, confirmation has been provided from the agent that an engineering solution for disposal of wastewater can be found. Accordingly, in line with this appeal decision, officers have recommended the inclusion of a negative planning condition prohibiting the commencement of any development until wastewater impact assessment confirms that a sewage connection can be made or that alternative provision for disposal of sewage is made, and this has been submitted to and agreed in writing by the Planning Authority. This would ensure that any concerns in respect of sewage capacity are properly addressed before the development can proceed. The proposal was also accompanied by a construction environmental management plan, outdoor lighting plan, preliminary ecological appraisal, bat use and bat roost potential survey, preliminary risk assessment, noise impact assessment, odour impact assessment, air quality impact assessment, and a drainage assessment. These documents have all been appraised by officers in consultation with the relevant competent authorities who've raised no objections to the development, and appropriate conditions have been included where necessary. Members are advised that 9 objection letters from 7 postal addresses have been received regarding this plan application. All objection reasons have been fully considered within the report. So overall, officers consider the proposal to comply with the local development plan, the policy requirements of the SPPS and all other relevant planning policies, and on that basis approval is recommended for the reasons outlined in the report and subject to the conditions suggested in the report. I'll just take you through the PowerPoint. The application site is located east of Armagh, and then this is the site location plan with the site outlined in red. It's just an aerial view of the site. So just to the west we have of the site we have an existing dwelling and an existing shop. To the east of the shop then there's a mechanics business, and then you can see the yard areas, and to the south is a premises occupied by Facility Refrigeration. In terms of the area plan, as you can see, the site's on white land. It's just the site layout, so the retail elements predominantly to the west of the site, and the B2 uses are to the east of the site. And then it's just a close-up of the petrol filling station forecourt. These are just the elevations and floor plans of the proposed retail unit. And then these are the canopy details over the pumps, and then the totem details. Obviously, these would be subject to a signage application in the future if members are minded to approve the application. And then these are just the plans of the industrial units. And then there's further 2 industrial units, and again, further 2 larger industrial units on the next slide. Just take you through a couple of the sections through the site. On the top section there, that goes through the site through the retail inside. So going from left to right, we're through the petrol pumps, then the retail units, and then you can see the B2 units. The next slide, if you just maybe talk briefly on the second from the top, that's going through the site from north to south through the B2 units. And then on this one, I'll just talk briefly on the third section, so second from bottom. So that's going through the site. You can see the retail unit and to the right, and the petrol pumps, and then that'll be the car park, and you can just see the relationship then with the neighbouring dwellings in Banfield, Mews. Next slide then just shows some of the boundary treatment elevations. So retaining structures are required within this development, as you'll see in the photographs. And then these are just some of the 3D visualizations. So we'll just take you through the site then in terms of the photographs. Starting in the northwestern corner, we have the dwelling here, which is to be demolished. This is going to be where an area of car parking is going to be proposed, and you can just see then the neighbouring dwellings there in Banfield, Mews. This is the shop then that's currently on the site. So just beyond those trees is the dwelling that was on the previous slide. And this photograph is just from further south on the Ballinholmore Road, facing east. So those commercial premises sort of in grey colour there outside the application site, but those in red are within the site. And then this photograph then just facing north, you can see the facility buildings that are currently on the site. And the next slide then you can just see the relationship of the car parking. Next photograph then just shows the car park again. To the rear of the car park then is this yard which is laid in stone, and you can see just the building in the background there, which is finished in block work, which is to be demolished. Then this just from that yard facing northeast towards Spring Meadows. So you can see the yard and you can see the existing level differences that exist. And this is just facing north, which is actually, you can again see the vacant lands, and just beyond the trees is the MOT centre within Armagh. And then this is just another view just to the east, so you can just see the difference in the levels between this site and the residential properties. This is approximately where the retail unit will be, so it's currently a stone yard and currently used to accommodate vehicles. Next photograph then is of the mechanics building, which is on the site, so these buildings are to be demolished. This is just the rear and side of the existing shop that's on the site, so just to give you a bit of a scale of that, it is quite a small scale shop that's currently on the site. And then that's just the photograph from the side of the shop facing through to the mechanics business, and you can see then the dwellings in Spring Meadows as well. So effectively what we'll have here is the car park, the fuel pumps, retail unit, and then Class B2 units. And then the final photograph then is just to show some of the off-street parking that exists on the Ballinholmore Road. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. We now have Jim Clarman Architects, and is going to have 3 minutes if you want to put your wee light on there. Thank you. Sorry, 1 second, it just hasn't started.
Chair, with the recommendation approved by the professional planning team and absent of any objectors, I'm happy to waive our time and answer any questions that the councillors may have. I know you have a busy schedule ahead of you. Okay, if you're acceptable to that.
Jim, thank you so much, and you were well within your time there. Open to the floor if has anyone any questions? Councillor Duffy, I'll bring you in.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Kyle. It was very thorough. Everything sort of needed in that application there, but it's just in the officer's response to objections. I know land ownership is not a matter for this, but a P2A, could you explain that to me? I haven't come across that before. Thanks.
Yep, so whenever the applicant submits the plan application, they have to declare their interest in their relationship to the land. So in this case, they own part of the land, but also part of the land they don't own. So they have to serve notice on the other party. So effectively, the P2A form is serving notice on the other landowner that they're submitting the plan application. Are you happy enough, Councillor Duffy? Yeah.
Councillor Armstrong, I'll bring you in.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have a few questions, but I'll just take them one by one and sort of get through them as best I can, if you indulge me. If we can go back to slide 33, it's photo 15 about the on-street parking. I think it comes into the wider context of the questions or the issues raised by objectors in relation to the flow of traffic. Don't know if we can get that up. I know this area very well, and if anybody that's driving on that road will know that the flow of traffic there is quite bad because of the way the houses are. There's no parking spaces for them, so they have to park basically on the road, which reduces that down to a single lane road. I noted in the report that there's going to be a realignment of the footpaths. I wonder if, Jim, maybe you could explain what those realignments are going to look like. Is that going to sort of alleviate the pressures on the parking in front of those properties? And yes, go from there and see what happens. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Jim, can I just bring you in there if you hit relight?
Yes, Chair. Thank you very much indeed for the question, Councillor. There was much discussions took place with DFI roads, especially in regard to the car parking. As I'm sure you're well know, DFI roads have a compound offices just slightly up from our site. The realignment or works to the footpath is to create 2 pelican crossings. As part of our application, David Sheard and his team requested that we consider desire lines from the housing developments opposite, okay, and how people would actually walk to the site rather than us imposing how we think they should walk. So minor alterations to the footpaths was to accommodate that. DFI roads were very, very insistent that we did not, in any part of it, reduce the existing car parking capacity on the road itself. And as alluded to in the professional planners report, we did offer to put an extra few car parking spaces more than we needed within the retail forecourt area, simply to deal with any overflowing. Because yes, there are congestion times at peak times at school in the morning, which we're aware of. So on the round, we were able to provide a crossing points, remodelling, providing a small alteration to existing entrance to ease traffic at the existing commercial entrance beside us, and as important as that, they're allowing for additional car parking on our site in those instances whereby access car parking was required. So it's a typical problem you have in a very urban area, no matter what town you're into, and with the ground and the lands we had available, that's all we could do, and that was accepted by DFI roads.
Councillor Armstrong, you looking back in again?
Yeah, thank you, Jim. And just in relation to, I think there was a PACC meeting with local residents, and just reading through the report, there seems to be sort of a disconnect between residents and the actual proposed, and the proposal here in front of us. That I think in your report said that it was met with quite positive outlooks, but then when we come to objections, there's sort of a long list of them. I'm just wondering, where are we falling in between this? Because I know that, was it 9 objections from 7 properties, and this, how are we going to alleviate the fears within the residents in this area? And then I think the second point was around one of the objectors raised that about the need of a petrol station within the area. And I note from the catchment map on page 24 of the report, I note that there's 5 petrol stations within a 5-minute drive of the proposed site. Deansbridge, there's one out the Kildare Road, one on Uri Road, and down one on the Lonsdale Road, one on Cathedral Road. So just want to understand the metrics in which they can be measured that there is a petrol station needed on this proposed site. So those 2 questions, much appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. With regard to...
Can I just ask you to come a wee bit forward towards the microphone, please? Jim, thank you. I'll just bring you in now.
We actually did have a good public meeting. I mean, there was a large number of people come to the site, okay? And a large number of people welcomed the facilities on site in regard to the retail. We've had no objections to the additional units that were created industrial-wise, which again, people saw as important, bearing in mind that the proposal in front of us is by our client is about £5.6 million investment in this area, and with a conservative view, over 100 jobs creating between the shop falling part-time and the industrial units behind. The objections raised were valid objections, which Kyle and the professional team, planning team, come back at us straight away on, but they were to deal with observations at detailed planning stage, which wouldn't have been available to people at the initial. If you can imagine, you're walking into a public hearing, you're looking at massive drawings, and you don't have time to consider what's in front of you. But there were a lot of them were the same concerns that we would see in regard to retail, especially food and filling stations. We've been doing, in our practice, personally, I've been dealing with food and retail developments and petrol filling stations for 37 years now, unfortunately. But noise, odour, light, all of those issues, air quality, very important. And again, I say, the planning team have delved into that and have requested reports and assessments and the conditions, insofar as that, that control the applicant, as it does in most sites. So from the objection point of view, it was based on having more detailed information and had time to sit at home and go through the plans. Need. Again, I said I can only speak for myself. I'm not the retail planning consultant in regard to arguing over 5%, but we are located in a very heavily dense, populated residential area. Okay, we talk about an old school within a 400 or basically 5-minute walk, which is 400 yards. Okay, and if you draw a sphere around it, the number of houses in that area would justify it in regard to the shop. Okay, petrol filling station, again, it's ancillary to the forecourt. So it's dealing with the need of people on site. They can use the facility without having to move on to another car operation, okay? And it also helps to basically maintain that the shop, as a supermarket, can operate basically 7 days a week, as opposed to 6 days and half a day on a Sunday. So that's just the honest reason for it all. But we do see, we do a lot of work with oil companies, and we do see that the need for the filling station will be there.
Thank you, Jim. Councillor Armstrong, you okay? Kyle, were you looking in on that issue? Yes.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just in terms of the concerns of residents, we have been very mindful in terms of how we've conditioned this proposal, where we've been quite precise in the conditions to try to make sure that amenity impacts, for example, are going to be mitigated against, and where we can enforce those conditions to try and protect residential amenity. We have Mr. Stokes here as a retail expert, but he might want to comment on this. But obviously, in terms of needs, the SPPS doesn't require demonstration of need effectively. What the SPPS requires is, because this isn't on a sequentially preferable site, that there's no sequentially preferable site that this could be located on. And we're satisfied, having reviewed information, that there isn't a sequentially preferable site. And then it requires that it won't unduly affect the vitality and viability of the protected centres. And again, we've considered the information, and we're content that that won't be the case. So it's just hopefully give a wee bit of clarity, but certainly if you want more on that, I'm sure Mr. Stokes would be happy to do so.
Thank you, Kyle. Councillor Lavery, I'll just bring you in.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Kyle, for presenting the report. I suppose my query would align more to the industrial side of the application. Given context, Chair, as you know, we're often quoted that Armagh is maybe not enough land, or all the land zoned for light and heavy industry and so on is built out, difficult to obtain new land on. So it'd be one of our applications to actually say from Armagh what sort of industrial element. The question to have maybe for the applicant is that, obviously you've mentioned this is near residential developments. Have you any indication of what types of businesses may wish to occupy these premises? Obviously some are bigger than others. Is it more startups, more sort of enterprise hub type businesses that need small space in terms of any manufacturing that will be allowed? Have you any sort of details on that? I know you did a survey in terms of the need of the shop, the retail unit and so on, as your observations as to the need that you be able to fill these spaces and so on, for the need of these types of industrial developments. If you have sort of any more details around that consideration as to why these are included in the way they are. Just a wee bit of background for me because I'm not too familiar with the area. Thanks.
Sorry, one second, I'll just bring you in.
Okay, thanks for the question. They are small businesses. The size and scale of the units proposed are small. They're light engineering, so not heavy manufacturing. Okay. Do we have anybody in mind? Councillor, no, not at this stage. Our client operates on the site himself and is a manufacturer installer. Okay, and they see the need for it. Okay, and they say, and it's a mixed-use development, so it's just bringing basically retail, residential, employment all into the one core. Okay, so to answer your question, light engineering, startups, they're of small scale size. We have 8 units over approximately 19,000 square feet in total, so I mean they're not large. And what you normally find is that a business of this scale who is successful grow out of it and move on to something larger.
Thank you. Councillor Lowry, you looking back in?
Yeah, thanks for that. Appreciate it. Just when you're speaking, sort of, yourself, Chair, it reminds me of the industrial wee enterprise unit there in Shankill, which is a mix of housing development. My only concern would have been, if there's sort of people operating retail out of some of these, so you have a lot of people coming in, but I don't think that's the context we're in here at these sites, so it's more small scale, I think. That wasn't me that made that noise.
Yes, I totally agree, Councillor Lavery. If it was like the one in Lurgan there, it would be grand. Councillor Armstrong, you're looking in?
Yeah. I'm not sure if anybody can answer this question, but I'll ask it anyway. I know that Armagh has a bypass plan that's been sitting on a shelf and probably will continue to sit on a shelf for the next number of years. I know that the proposed plans at the time was run from the Bordown Road to come up the Hampspawn Road onto through Orangefield, Ballinahone, then out to the Newry Road. I'm wondering, has that been taken into consideration by DFA, or has been consideration? I know it's probably never going to happen, but if you don't ask a question, you'll never know. Thank you.
Kyle, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah, within the area plan, there is a potential new road identified in close proximity to the site, but it does not go through the site, so it doesn't. So this proposal doesn't prejudice that scheme, but certainly we do have Val Russell here from DFA Roads if he wants to make any further comment on that.
Val will bring you in if you hit your wee button. Thank you.
Yeah, the Armagh West link, or East link, it goes from Portdown Road, across by the Army Barracks, through, up past the MOT Centre, through there, and then up to the Newry Road. Now, it's identified on the area plan. I worked on it for a number of years prior to it being shelved. The documents are still sitting on the shelf, so it may go ahead if finance became available, or whatever. But it's protected, and this is well beyond the site. It's the fields to the far side of between it and the MOT Centre.
There was me thinking we were going to get a scoop on the new bypass around Armagh, but no, it's just I wasn't too sure where the play. I know it's very close to the site, and the link roads are all you can see remnants of them. So I was just making sure and getting clarity on that. But thank you very much for the clarification.
you're chancing your arm there, Councillor Armstrong. Is there any other questions? No? So do you want to move into the members' debate? Anybody, anything? Councillor Armstrong, I'll bring you in.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Look, I know the area very well, grew up in and around it, and I know whatever you decide here today, you're going to be the worst in the world or you're going to be the best in the world. You know, it's either going to be the person who's delivered a multi-million-pound project in an area, or you're going to be the one who opposed it and stopped that progression, or you're going to get people giving off that they're going to have to live beside a petrol station, or you get people giving off for other reasons. But there is concerns around traffic, but that's whether the petrol station is going to be there or not, whether we accept this or not. Those traffic concerns are still going to exist, and there's probably no easy way around it. But I do see there's potential in the site. There's potential there for jobs within the local area. There's potential there for retail units, industrial units. There is a lot of potential. There is positives to be seen out of it. And I know that people will have concerns, and they have been considered, and we have listened to them, and we have looked at them. So look, I think I know what way we're going ahead in this, so happy enough. Thank you, Chair.
And yes, you're right, Councillor Armstrong. Sometimes it doesn't matter what you do, it'll not make some people happy. Is there any other questions or comments? No? Right, so do we want to go then to decision? Does anybody want, this needs a proposer and seconder? Councillor Armstrong, I'll bring you in.
Yeah, as I said, yeah, look, we're happy enough to propose, and hopefully we see a lot of jobs in the local area. So thank you.
Councillor Flaherty, I'll just bring you in.
Thank you, Chair. And yes, I think I'm happy to second this proposal. Again, along the lines, I think too, yes, it's an investment, but it also looks very like a good regeneration project for that particular area. And I think we have to be positive about these particular sites. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Flaherty. So that's been proposed and second. That's it, passed, yeah. All agreed, yep. Okay. We now have Appendix 5. So we'll now move to Appendix 5. It's application number LA 08 2023 2334F, and it's up for approval, and it's recommended for approval, and Senior Planning Officer Liam is going to take us through this. The following also in attendance. No? Yes? Okay. Attendance and have speaking rights for clarification purposes only, and that's Claire McPartlin from Bell Roston. Liam will just bring you in.
Thank you, Councillor. This application seeks planning permission for the replacement of 5 agricultural buildings. One of the buildings is already in situ and is being used for agricultural purposes and includes an underground digestate tank, both of which is seeking to be regularised under this application. The proposal also includes improved access arrangements onto Kiltown Road and associated site works. The application is before members as it has attracted 4 or more objections. It's taken that members have read the report in full, therefore this is only a brief synopsis of the content. Members are advised that evidence has been submitted that demonstrates that there had been 5 agricultural buildings on the site, and therefore the proposal for 5 replacement sheds is considered acceptable in principle. The application site is in the open countryside as defined by the area plan. There are no policies within the plan that relate to the proposed development, and members are advised that the SPPS Edition 2, PPS 21, CTY 1 and CTY 12 provide the relevant context for determining this application. CTY 12 PPS 21 allows for planning permission to be granted for development on an active and established agricultural holding where it is demonstrated that it complies with specific criteria A to E as set out in the officer's report. As set out in detail in the report, DAERA have confirmed that the farm business is both active and established. As set out in detail in the officer's report, the proposed development is considered to comply with each of the criteria A to E as set out in CTY 12. Also, officers are also content that there are no suitable buildings on the holding or enterprise that could be used, and that the design and materials used are sympathetic to the locality and the adjacent buildings. In terms of road safety, members are advised that the application seeks to improve visibility of an existing access onto Kiltown Road, to close an existing access onto Maharbeg Road, and to retain an unaltered access onto Maharbeg Road. Officers in consultation with DFI Roads consider the proposed works to be an overall betterment and will not prejudice road safety. DFI Rivers have been consulted with regard to the drainage assessment that was submitted in support of the application, and it received no objective from a flood risk perspective. Historic and Environment Division raised no objection to the proposal due to the separation distance from an industrial heritage site. Officers have also consulted with SES and the various bodies within NIEA, and each consultee has returned a favourable consultation response, confirming that they have no objection to the proposed development. Consideration of the third-party objections is set out in detail in the officer's report, and officers are recommending approval of the application subject to the conditions. I want to take a run through our PowerPoint. So this is our site location within the rural area. Again, a site location within the general area, just annotated by the, again, just an aerial view of the site. Just a blown up view of the aerial, giving you an idea of the buildings that are in situ. So you can see some of the buildings that are proposed, retained and have been in situ in the previous guise of this farm holding. So this is a proposed site plan, so you can see that the buildings are being dragged together rather than having them sort of more sporadic throughout the site. These are the sections, proposed elevations of the sheds. Again, just our landscape plan associated with the proposal. So these are the visuals. You can see the visuals of the buildings that were in situ back in before their demolition and what's proposed. So again, visual of what's been proposed in the site and some of the landscape proposals that are associated with that. Some of the objections that were received in relation to the application seem to misinterpret what this application actually was. The applicant does have a AD plant further up the road, approximately 2k away, and our application site you can see annotated by the other blue arrow there. The sheds are the only aspect of the shed that has any relation to the AD plant is that it will be used for the storage of digestate underneath one of the sheds. So again, just another view of the site. Another view of the site from a different road. View of the site from the Kiltown Road and the Maharbeg Road. Some of the sheds that are existing that will be demolished as part of the proposal. Some of the sheds that are to be retained. And that's our underground tank that's already in situ that this application seeks to regularise. This is the connection point from the umbilical cord, which is a more modern way of spreading digestate on the land. So it's an upgraded version of how tankers would fill up and bread digester on the fields. This allows less of a trip generation associated with the process, and it's generally seen as a more environmentally friendly way forward and how we deal with that. And again, just another elevation of existing shed to be demolished. And again, that shed to be demolished for creation of the access, and one of the sheds to be retained. That's us.
Thank you, Liam. And as I said, we have Claire McPartlin also in attendance and has speaking rights for clarification purposes only. Okay, so is there any questions in relation to this application? Nope. Okay. We'll go on to the members' debate then. Is there anything? Nope. Okay. So we'll go to members' decision then. We need a proposer and seconder for this application. Don't be shy. Okay, Councillor Duffy, we'll bring you in.
Thank you, Chair. I propose we accept the recommendation. You know, there is shades on it, so it's just more the same.
As proposed by Councillor Duffy, we'll bring in Councillor Donnelly.
Just like to second the proposal.
As proposed and second, all agreed? Yeah, okay. Thank you. And we will now move on to Appendix 6, application number LA 082021 0126 LBC. And we have Kyle, Planning Manager, taking this. The following is also in attendance and has speaking rights for clarification purposes only, and that is Sam Nicholson, DA Architects. I will bring in Councillor Flaherty.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. And just in the interest of the committee, I will be exiting here just due to a conflict of interest with the agent. Oh, I can't move.
Sorry, we'll just bring in Kel now.
Thanks, Chair. This application seeks listed build consent for the restoration and change of use of a listed building to 3 apartments and 1 bedsit at 5 St Mark's Place, restoration and change of use of the rear outbuildings to 2 terraced houses, and erection of 3 dwellings to the rear of the site with ancillary works. The application site is located at 5 St Mark's Place in Armagh. The application is before you this evening as it attracts objections from more than 4 separate postal addresses, and it is recommended that consent is granted. Officers have taken that members have read the report in full, and as such this is a synopsis only. The application site is located within the settlement development limits of Armagh as defined by the Armagh Area Plan 2004. The site is located on land zoned as existing housing. It is within the central area of Armagh and is partially within the conservation area. The only section of the site outside of the conservation area is a section of the rear garden. St Mark's Place is a terrace of 5 buildings, all of which are grade B1 listed. The site fronts onto the Mall and is in close proximity to other buildings, including St Mark's Church and the Crozier Hall. And then obviously, as I said, the adjacent buildings are also listed. By way of background, members are advised that this listed building consent application was submitted with an application for full plan permission. The plan application for full permission, LA08 2021-0125F, was refused plan permission by the Council on the 27th of June 2024. The decision of the Council was subsequently appealed under Appeal Reference 2024-0077, and the appeal was allowed on the 28th of July 2025. Members are therefore advised that the existing approval on the site represents a material planning consideration. Members are reminded that the consideration of this listed building consent application relates to the impact on the listed building, and all other matters, including the principle of development, have previously been established through the allowed appeal. To facilitate the works to the main building at 5 St Mark's Place, internal alterations are proposed. Externally, an existing first storey projection would be removed from the southeastern elevation of the building, and 2 new dormer windows are proposed on the 2nd floor. External repairs are proposed to the building, and the new dormer windows are to be finished in sync. The existing render on the rear return of the building is to be removed and re-rendered in lime plaster and painted. To facilitate the development of the outbuilding, internal alterations are proposed. Externally, works to the building are also proposed to repair and enhance the building. Other external works include the removal of some existing timber panelling and the replacement of these with sliding sash windows. The walls of the new dwellings would be finished in smooth render. The roof would be finished in natural slate. The chimney would be bricked with a clay pot, and the windows would be hardwood sliding sash windows, which are painted white, with the exception of the rear windows and the sink projection. And the porches would be finished in coarse rubble. The work involves development within a Grade B1 listed building with reference HB 15-17-012E. As noted in the report, other listed buildings are also in close proximity and adjacent to the site. These listed buildings are of special architectural and historic interest and protected by Section 80 of the Planning Act Northern Ireland 2011. Officers in HED have considered the proposal against the policy requirements of Policy BH8 of PPS 6 and raised no concerns subject to the conditions as proposed. Officers have also considered the impact of the works on other listed buildings and raised no concerns regarding Policy BH11 of PPS 6. Officers, in considering the conditions for this application, have been mindful of the comments made by HED and the conditions applied by the PSC in these matters following the decision of the appeal. Members are advised that the conditions suggested are considered appropriate, ensuring that the requirements of the criteria within policies BH8 and BH11 of PPS 6 are met. Members are advised that 21 letters of objection from 8 confirmed postal addresses have been received, and these matters have been fully considered in the report. So overall, officers consider the proposal to comply with local development plan, the policy requirements of the SPPS and all other relevant planning policies, and on that basis it's recommended that consent is granted subject for the reasons outlined in the report and subject to the conditions suggested in the report. I'll just take you through the PowerPoint in this one. So, as I say, the site's in the central area of Armagh and fronts on to the Mall. And then this is the site location plan with the site outlined in red. And then this is just a aerial view of the site. So just immediately south of the site is an avenue which runs up to St Mark's Church, which you can just about see there. And then Armagh Orange Hall is immediately south of that. Yeah, in terms of the area plan, it's on existing housing land, as shown in grey, and the brown doesn't accurately, but it does show the conservation area, which has been slightly amended from this plan. But as you can see, half the site is within the conservation area, and then the rear garden is not. And this is the proposed site layout plan. So just starting from the bottom, you have the main building at 5 St Mark's Place, and then above that you have the outbuildings, and then above that you have the 3 new build dwellings. And these are just the floor plans for 5 St Mark's Place to create the 3 apartments and the bedsit. And this is the front elevations, and then the side elevations. So yeah, next slide. And then for the outbuilding, this is the floor plan. And then the elevations. And then this elevation is one of the new build dwellings on the site to the rear. And then the details of the other two dwellings to the rear. And then it's just a window and door schedule. So this photograph then is the front elevation of the building. So the building we're concerned with, you can see has the windows boarded up there. And then this is be the principal elevation to the side in terms of entry. And then this is the rear return. So you can see just to the left at the first floor level, there's the projection. So that projection is going to be removed from the scheme, and then it's going to be the render's going to also be removed and going to be replastered in the lime and then painted. Fortunately, our photographs didn't come out so well for this outbuilding, but you can see the outbuilding and then an archway which leads through to the lands to the rear. And then it's just the rear elevation of that outbuilding. The next slide then is just the lands then to the rear where the new dwellings would be constructed, and you can just see then the trees to the right that they're along the avenue up to St. Mark's Church. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle, for that report. We'll bring in Councillor Armstrong.
Just apologies, Chair, I forgot to declare an interest earlier on, as I had previously objected to the previous application with the objectors, so I'll excuse myself.
Okay. Any questions in relation to this? No? Okay. Members' debate? Has anybody anything they would like to raise? You're all very quiet, okay? Then we will go to members' decision. We need a proposer and seconder. Again, don't be shy. Councillor Duffy, you're looking in.
Thank you, Chair. Seem to be the only one with a finger working here today. Yes, no problem with this recommendation at all. Happy to propose and see a boarded up building being brought back into good use.
Thank you. Councillor Duffy, have we got a seconder? No, nobody going to take a seconder. I myself will second Councillor Duffy's proposal. Okay, so it's been proposed and seconded. Is everybody in agreement? Okay, that's all been passed. Thank you. Councillor Flaherty, you're looking in?
Yes, Chair. Same again, Chair. Just to declare my interest to the committee, I'll be leaving the room.
Thank you, Councillor Flaherty. We are moving on to Appendix 2. It's application number LA 08 021 02300, and Senior Planning Officer Trudy is going to take us through this. There was an nearly get that out, report has been circulated. Trudy, do you just want to come in there? If you press your wee button. Sorry, if you press it again, Trudy, that was me.
Thank you, Chair. This application relates to the erection of a dwelling and garage adjacent and south of 89 Newtonhampton Road. It's before you this evening as it was called in by Alderman Spears while he was a member of the Council. Members are advised that officers receive further information on behalf of the applicant via email this morning. This submission has been considered and officers' assessment of this information has been circulated to members by way of an addendum report in advance of this meeting. The applicant is of the view that the application site represents both a dwelling on a farm under Policy CTY 10 and an infill opportunity under Policy CTY 8. The applicant has demonstrated that they have an active farm which has been established for more than the requisite 6 years. With the exception of the application site, this farm holding is located at Killycapel Road, approximately 2.5 kilometres east of the site. The applicant advises they cannot cluster or visually link with the two existing groups of buildings on the farm, as in their opinion there are demonstrable health and safety reasons to seek an alternative site due to their proximity to an active quarry and 2 wind turbines. While they've referred to noise, odours, vibrations, etc., no evidence has been provided to substantiate this. Members are also advised that there are a number of dwellings in close proximity to the quarry and turbines, including 2 on this farm holding. This morning's submission on behalf of the applicant requested further time to submit the acoustic information. However, as members will have read in the addendum report, officers are of the view that this would not overcome all refusal reasons, and the sufficient opportunity has already been provided for further information to be submitted. With regard to the infill opportunity, officers are of the opinion that the gap between Lisnadil Primary School and number 89 Newtonhampton Road is not a small gap, and taking into account the frontages of the residential properties on the frontage, the gap could accommodate more than the 2 dwellings permitted by the policy. Members are advised that there is a small structure on this application site. This does not have the benefit of planning permission and has not been given significant weight in the consideration of the application. The structure is likely to be immune from enforcement action, but officers are of the opinion that the structure does not have a frontage to the road for the purposes of infill policy, nor does it have a presence onto the road, and therefore does not contribute to the substantially and continuously built-up frontage. Officers are therefore of the opinion that rather than infilling a gap in the frontage of a dwelling on the site would add to urban development and would result in a detrimental change in the rural character of the area. Members will note that the officer's report includes a refusal reason based on policies NH2 and NH5 of PPS2. As detailed in the addendum report, officers are now satisfied that the biodiversity checklist submitted in this morning's details, that no further survey work would be required in terms of protected habitats and species, and are therefore content to remove this refusal reason. Members are advised the consultation responses were favourable and that no third-party representations were received. However, officers are of the opinion that the proposal fails to comply with the SPPS, Policy CTY 1, 8, 10 and 14 of PPS 2, and therefore recommend the application is refused as set out in the report. And I'll take you through the slides. So this is our location within the general area just to the south of Armagh. That's our site location plan. That's our aerial photograph showing the wider area. This is the aerial photograph then of the site itself. So this is taken slightly further down outside number 93 Newtonhampton Road, looking back up towards the application site. And then the next one is slightly further up the road, still outside number 93, and you can just see the building of Lisnadil Primary School there. The field adjacent to that is the school's playing fields, and then the application site is beyond that row of trees. This photograph shows the Lisnadil Primary School playing field, and then this is taken from the frontage of the application site. This is taken from the entrance showing the existing field entrance and the structure that we've referred to in the report. Now, this photograph shows the existing structure, and what I've done is highlighted in the site location plan that that's the building referred to there. Now, you will note that that was a scaled drawing, and according to scaling that building should be 12.6 metres by 6 metres. And if you just go to the next slide, please. That's it up close. We reckon that building is probably in the region of 2 by 2.5 metres. So it's just to give you an indication when you're looking at the plans that we don't feel that that's representative of what's actually on the ground. Next slide, please. So this is taken from the other end of the site, opposite 89 Newtonhampton Road, looking southwest again towards the site frontage. So the site frontage is that row of mature trees. Next slide, please. Now this is taken just from the boundary with number 89, looking into the site. Again, the entire field is bounded by mature trees and hedgerows. These are our frontage measurements. Now, for the purpose of this, for the infill, the gap is taken from building to building, so we don't include the school playing fields. And because we have a non-domestic building on the frontage, we only take the domestic ones. And as you can see, it's quite clear that you'd fit more than 2 dwellings in the application site. This is showing the distance from the application site to the main farm holdings. So the application site's in red, the main farm dwelling on the farm holding is ringed in blue. And this is the farm holding. As you'll see, there's one field that is outside the main holding, and it's our application site. The next slide then shows the 2 wind turbines, because they're quite difficult to make out, ringed in blue. And we also have a number of residential properties that are all shown on the LPS domestic register, highlighted, written in white, and that's our concept plan just to end with. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you, Trudy. Has anyone any questions for Trudy? Councillor Duffy? Ian?
Yes, thank you, Trudy. Thank you, Chair. Yes, it mentions 2 wind turbines and a quarry as to why they can't build in round the farm holding, and it actually says there's two buildings already in that area. Would them 2 buildings or 2 homes been there before the quarry and before the wind turbines were put in place?
Trudy, can I bring you in on that, please?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Duffy, it's difficult to tell how long the quarry's been there. It's an active quarry that's been there for a significant length of time, but the turbines probably were there before the turbines. Thank you.
Thank you, Trudy. Councillor Duffy, you okay with that? Yeah. Anyone else, any questions? No. Then we will go on to members' debate. Has anybody anything they wish to? No? Okay. Members' decision, we do need a proposer and seconder for this. Councillor Duffy, I'll just bring you in as your button seems to be working well tonight.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Trudy. This is a straightforward refusal that doesn't meet a lot of the criteria, so just go to support the officer's recommendation to refuse.
Okay, thank you. Councillor O'Kane, I'll bring you in.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second that.
Yeah, we have a proposer and seconder. All agreed? Yeah. Okay, that's that one through. Sorry, we're going on now to Appendix 7. Application number. Oh, sorry, we just need to wait on Councillor Flaherty coming back in again. Okay, so that's us now on Appendix 7, application number LA 08 2024 0190F. And Senior Officer, Planning Officer Lim is going to take us through this.
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks planning permission for the erection of 12 floodlights at a 15-metre height, 8 of the floodlights at pitch number 1 and floor floodlights at pitch number 2 to cater both for community and school use. The application is being presented to the committee as it has attracted more than 4 objections from separate postal addresses. It has taken the members have read the officer's report in full, hence this is only a brief synopsis of the issues set out therein. This application site lies partly within and partly outside the development limits of Lobrickland as set out in the area plan. The application site, however, is wholly within the approved site for the New Bridge Integrated College and associated sports pitches that currently remain under construction. The proposed floodlights will permit the pitches to have a dual use as a school facility during school hours and used by community sports clubs between the hours of 8 p.m. or 6 p.m. and 21:30 p.m. Monday, Wednesday and Friday. The applicable policy context for consideration of this application is provided by the SPPS Edition 2 and PPS 8 Open Space, Sport and Outdoor Recreation. The existing area of open space in this regard will be retained and enhanced through this application, as the proposal will not result in any loss of open space. There is no conflict with the provisions of Policy OS 1. Officers consider the proposal is a further development of an existing approval granted under the phased construction of the school and all associated infrastructure associated therein. As the site has been approved for an intensive sports facility, the applicable policy is OS 4 of PPS 8. The proposed development is required to meet 5 policy subtests of OS 4. Officers have assessed the proposal against each of these in detail in the report. In terms of the design and layout, the floodlighting scheme proposed will provide artificial lighting for school and community use on the playing fields approved under the school application. The development, as previously stated, will include 8 15-metre floodlights at the pitch number 1, which is the grass field, and 4 number 15 floodlights on pitch number 2, which is the 4G. The pitches are located approximately 30 metres south of Leganani Road and 25 metres west of the housing development at Coolnacran Park. As part of the proposal, a floodlighting and pitch management use plan have been submitted with the application. The purpose of the plan was to set out the clear arrangements for the controlled, limited and responsible use of the pitches and the floodlights by the local community and sports clubs. The management plan sets out that the use of the floodlights will be restricted to Monday, Wednesday and Friday evening between the hours of 6:30 and 21:30. Officers have considered the proposed development in terms of its scale, its design, its layout and the material finish, and find it acceptable in terms of the character of the area and the intended use of the development. In terms of impact on amenity, the proposed floodlights have been designed and scaled to ensure visual amenity and character of the wider area and locality have not been adversely affected. The floodlight assessment has outlined that the nearest receptor dwellings 25 metres away in Coolnacran Park will experience a value of 0 lux during the operation of the floodlights. The proposed alignment and brightness of the floodlights have been designed to minimise the impact on any residential amenity and will not cause an adverse impact on the visual amenity and character of the area. Given the proposal is for floodlighting for previously approved pitches, of which are ancillary to the main use of the school and for our community sports clubs, officers are satisfied that the existing use of the site is not changing and that given the separation distances from the surrounding residential development, the new floodlighting will not have an adverse impact on their amenity. Traffic and parking concerns have been assessed by DFI Roads, and officers are satisfied that through that consultation exercise that access and parking arrangements for the proposal are deemed to be acceptable. In terms of impact on natural and built heritage, the application site was accompanied by a biodiversity checklist, newt survey, PEA, badger survey and invasive species survey. No nature conservation, archaeology or built heritage features have been identified within the vicinity of the site. The proposal therefore does not conflict with the SPPS, PPS 6 or Policy OS 4 of PPS 8. Members are advised that there were a number of objections in relation to the proposal. All of those objections have been considered in detail in the report and approval is recommended subject to the suggested conditions. I just want to take a run through the PowerPoint. So you can see location of the site, just within Lochbricklin and partly outside the development limit of Lochbricklin. This is our site location plan, so you can see the two pitches outlined in red. The larger red line was the grass pitch and smaller is the 4G. So there's our site layout plan. There's the position of the floodlights at different intervals around the extremity of each of the pitches. These are the lighting details. You can see the height, 15 metres. So this is an aerial photograph of the site. You can see that the grass pitch is already in situ. The 4G pitch is yet to be completed. Again, blown up aerial view of the site, so you can see pitch 1 and pitch 2 as annotated on the plans. So this is a view of their site from the Laganally Road. And you can see the position of pitch 2 then from the Laganally Road. So that's a view from pitch 1 looking south. You can see agricultural fields just in the background. And another view of pitch 1 looking north towards the Laganally Road. And again, a view west. And if you look east, and you can see the backdrop there of the dwellings. This is Coolacran Park with the pitches located to the rear. And again, looking from Coolacran Park towards the orientation of the 4G pitch. And this is the view from Donard View Road, where views of the pitch are largely obscured. Thank you.
Thank you, Liam. Is there any questions for Liam in relation to this application? No? Then we'll go to members' debate. Does anybody anything? Councillor Lavey, you're looking in.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Liam. I suppose that to speak positively, I know a number of schools in Borough and Craigavon are doing something similar to get floodlight and to open their facilities for both the school use and in particular community use in the evenings, especially as there's a limited amount of floodlit pitch capacity, as I said, across all codes, across all of the borough. So it seems to be quite appropriate, especially when Liam's gone into detail there about the way the lights will be angled to sort of minimise use and this condition on, which is essentially limited to 3 evenings a week, you know, over the winter time. So it seems to be quite a prudent application. I'd say it would probably benefit a lot of the clubs there in that wider Lochbricklin area who are maybe at present time struggling with appropriate winter accommodation. So I think the approval recommendation in this instance is the most appropriate one.
I totally agree, Councillor Lavery. Floodlights are well needed, especially here in Ireland, because the weather's never, the sun's not always shining, let's put it that way. Can we go now to members' decision? Do we have a proposer and seconder for this? Councillor Lavery?
Happy to propose a recommendation, Chair, that we approve this application.
Councillor Donnelly, I'll bring you in.
Just like to second that.
Thank you. That's proposed and seconded. Is everybody agreed? Yes? Okay. So we are now on Appendix 8, and that's application number LA 08 2025 03440, and Senior Planning Officer Nicola is going to bring us through this. It's been a long wait for you tonight, Nicola, so thank you. Put your wee light on.
Thank you, Chair. This application is seeking outline permission for a dwelling on a farm, and it's being presented today as the applicant is related to a council officer. In terms of the principle of development, the main planning policies are CTY1 and CTY10 of PPS 21 for a dwelling on a farm. Policy CTY 10 requires three criteria to be met for planning permission to be granted for a dwelling on a farm. The farm business is active and established, and in this case, Borough have confirmed that this is the case. No dwellings or development opportunities have been sold off within the last 10 years, and this has been checked and verified. And the site is visually linked or sited to cluster with an established group of buildings on the farm, which you'll see in the presentation it is. In such circumstances, the proposal must also meet the requirements of CTY 13 integration, CTY 14 rural character, and CTY 16 for development relying on non-main sewage. The plan report has also considered access, parking, the natural environment, biodiversity, and residential and amenity issues. Officers are content that this proposal meets all of the planning requirements. There are no objections raised by any of the consultees, which are NI Water, DFI Roads and DERA. There are no third-party objections to the proposal. The recommendation is to approve, and I'll go through the PowerPoint presentation. So this is the site. It's just west of Lochgall. This is a site location plan. This is the aerial context of the site, and you can see the farm buildings then just immediately north of the site. Next slide, please. This then is a concept plan of the dwelling. This is a view, sorry. This is the view then of that site along that road, and that's a similar view. One was taken a few months ago and one was yesterday. Next slide, please. This is then a view from the junction of the Ballygassoon Road and the Ballynick Road. A view then just heading up that road towards the site, and you can see the farm buildings on each side. They both belong to the farm in question. Next slide, please. Again, that's just a view a wee bit closer to the site. Next slide, please. Then that's the view right in front of the entrance, just of the hedge, and it's just over to the right-hand side. Next slide, please. This site just sits behind the agricultural buildings. I think that finalises the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicola. Is there any questions in relation to this application for Nicola? No? Okay. Can we go then to members' debate? Has anyone anything to say? No. Just making sure you're still awake. And can we have members' decision then? Councillor Armstrong, you want to come in? Oh, wow. It's all lighting up here.
Yeah, no, it seems pretty straightforward. Plan application, and happy to propose the officer's recommendation.
I'd like to second that proposal.
Thank you. That was proposed by Councillor Armstrong and seconded by Councillor Donnelly. Is everybody in agreement? Yeah? That was our final application. And thank you, everybody, for tonight and your patience with me. So, thank you and safe home. Can we stop the live feed now, please?